Welcome to the Babylon 5 Third Age podcast. We are three Europeans who are too young to have seen the show when it first aired, but we are here now in the middle of the Third Age, and we are going to look back at an entire run of the show. We are going to share our impressions and discussions about anything that stands out to us, and we are each going to bring a slightly different perspective to these conversations. And, well, today we are going to look at The Gathering, which is the pilot episode of the show. And because this is also our first gathering, I think short introductions are in order to kind of give you an idea of who we are and what we are going to bring to the table. We are going to start with Meike.
Hi, I'm Meike, and I'm here because I love a real good story. And I'm watching Babylon 5 for the very first time.
Then we have Layla.
Hi, I'm Layla, and I'm here because I love history, and I'm watching all of Babylon 5 only for the second time.
And I'm Alex. I really like spaceships, building them and blowing them up and watching them, and I've been watching Babylon 5 for many times and I haven't counted right. The cat is also here, so we are going to have to cut some of that out as well.
No, we don't have to.
Well, if she jumps on the table. But
no,
okay.
That's perfect. Everyone loves cats.
These are decent enough introductions, so we can jump into the discussion of our episodes relatively soon. Each of these discussions is going to be split into three different parts. We are first going to talk about our impressions about the episode in general. Then we are going to pick something that stood out to us, which might be anything from the big story that was intended by the creator or a tiny little detail that just sparks our imagination. And after we've discussed those, we are going to go to the third part, the tapestry, where we try to weave all of these things together into the big picture of Babylon 5, which in the pilot episode obviously is going to work a little bit different because there is no big picture yet. We are going to get more of the starting points. Okay, at this point, I'm going to start with a synopsis for The Gathering, the pilot episode of Babylon 5. Babylon 5 is open for business. In just 2 days, the ambassador of the mysterious Warren Empire is going to arrive on the station. He is so mysterious, in fact, that he doesn't stick to his flight path and arrives 2 days early, before anybody on Babylon 5 really has got the security down. This backfires almost immediately when our ambassador gets poisoned as soon as he steps foot on the station. This puts our crew in a pretty precarious diplomatic situation because the Warren Empire is just about ready to start a war should their ambassador have been assassinated, but on the other hand, they also really don't like the idea of anybody opening the encountering suit. This entire situation gets even made worse when the newly arrived telepath accuses our commander Sinclair of being the perpetrator. So this is the little mystery that needs to be resolved, and yeah, I think we can jump almost immediately into our first impressions. What did you think about this first debuting episode? Before we get to that, I'm going to jump in with two little housekeeping notes, two things of note. I don't know if any of this is going to be usable. Maybe we have to do it all again. No, we can manage it. Two little housekeeping notes on this point. Layla and I watched the original version of this pilot movie that was created in 1993. Meike and I watched the revised, remastered version of this film. So there are going to be slight differences in between them. It's largely the same story, but if there's a conversation that we're talking about that seems a little bit odd to you, it might be because this is one of the scenes that were a little bit different, and we might touch on these differences. The other housekeeping note is, because we have a newbie among us in Meike, we are going to keep spoilers to a minimum. So in our discussion and also in the big picture and in the end, we are only going to talk about the show up to the point that we have watched, which in this case, we are only going to talk about The Gathering itself. All right. Now, though, let's talk about our first impressions. What did you think about this episode? And I guess it's fair if we start with Meike, because this is her very first foray into Babylon 5.
Yeah, what I liked right from the beginning is I'm not sure how to phrase it, but it was a cozy feeling. you had the impression that that the station existed for quite a long time, that the people, the characters knew each other, with simple, small aspects they used, especially the talk between the doctor and Takashima was one which really felt good for me, because yeah, it just gave this nice feeling of, yeah, they know each other, they know how to joke, what would be understood, because well, a joke for one person doesn't mean it's a joke for the other. So yeah, I really like this feeling that was given.
Okay. How about you?
First of all, I have to say that First of all, I have to say that the first time I watched that episode was after I watched everything else. So I started with episode 1, with the regular episode, watched all, and then we watched that one. And in that contrast, I thought while watching this, oh my god, what is this? Because it was just such a drawback in quality, basically, after you watched the last season and movies. But this time, it was not that bad, actually, and this time I really also enjoyed this coziness. Like it felt more like starting to watch a sitcom. Just that we had this background that we knew it was a complex world, and big and important things were going to happen. But yeah, it felt like a sitcom. It felt very comfortable, and that is basically also all that I want to say to that at this point.
All right, you're already keeping stuff for the bigger discussion, I feel, right?
I think so.
I think I feel much the same. I can always just describe The Gathering as a pleasant surprise, because I always imagined it being much worse than it actually turned out to be. And the one thing that I really enjoyed is that because it's movie length, it really takes quite a lot of time for everything that is happening. So in the beginning, you get the lights shining through the window as a ship goes past, or when you meet Londo for the first time, you know that he's gambling, but you also see him throwing the dice, and you get more of an idea of how the game actually works. And these are all things that in regular episodes don't really have the time, so I just felt like they really took advantage of the fact that, no, we have a feature length here, and we can develop as much of this world as possible. And in some places, this feels very experimental, but in other places, I think it works out quite well. Which
To get in right there, I think this is what makes it this cozy feeling, because it is more realistic and not too rushed. They take their time to show this is the world we're talking about, or we're playing in here right now, and they use this time instead of pushing more into this, which I also really like. If you think about other movies, I'm not really sure which one doesn't come to mind right now, but there's so much input, and there's a story bit, and there's a bit, and here we have another action scene, but they take their time. It's more slow paced. I mean, maybe it's because it's 1994, but it just feels good.
Yes, also because of that, we see like our status quo, because we see how people work, we see how things are supposed to function, and not just because we need a plot, we have like a big disaster and everything is kind of different than it should be. Even when there's the incident, even when Kosh is attacked, we still see people that deal with it competent, because it's their job, and these things are kind of expected. Although it's a dramatic incident and people are scared for the consequences, it's still that we see they do their job because this is just what they do.
I guess what also plays into this is that, yes, we get a Vorlon fleet that threatens the station, but this military action is never really put front and center. There's always this sense, as soon as the shooting starts, we have already failed. So it's treated much more like a big diplomatic crisis. It's something that needs to be resolved with an investigation and with diplomats talking to each other. But there's not this big action set piece happening, which I actually find quite refreshing, because especially for the 90s, I feel like a lot of problems usually get resolved with a shootout. So this is not happening here is actually quite nice. And I think we're
Well,
already diving a little
So-
bit into the big discussion part, so we don't have to make this strong distinction here already. But yeah, let's just keep going from there, and let's stick for the first moment to this cozy feeling, and then we can see if another point comes up.
Yeah, sorry, I almost interrupted you there. You could argue that in the end it's still solved through a shooting because Sinclair and the assassin are shooting each other, but it's a different scale. So I think this is, yeah, it's more realistic. It feels more realistic, even though we're talking about science fiction. It's something more relatable to a person. I mean, okay, we here wouldn't have a shooting to experience, but it's because human interaction is, or human and with yeah, a certain way we have here. It's a different feeling instead of just artillery shooting at each other.
It all happens on a scale that is much more recognizable, which I guess is something that the show in general is kind of known for, this idea that this is a universe that is all in all a little bit more grounded. And I think for us, Layla and me especially, it's kind of nice because the scale of the station, this 250,000 people, is a very normal, like, city size for the place that we're living in. So I can always kind of relate Babylon 5 to my hometown in this way. And this just gives me a good idea of like how closely knit is this community, what kind of places am I expecting here.
Maybe to get to another point, when you start watching the film or the movie, it's told that no, it's the last Babylon station, and I like what kind of storytelling they do in this way, because they give you information where you at the first moment say, that's it, and what about the others? What happened to the other 4 if this is the last one? And then, I mean, like 10 minutes later, you get this information, but it's like breadcrumbs. You get a bit, but at the next moment, you have so many more questions you want to be answered, that you keep watching because you want to know more about this. You want to have the answers for your questions. And it feels like the whole structure is of the story is made this way, that you always get a bit, but at the same moment the whole world, the whole story goes wider than before, and therefore you have the thirst for more. I want to know more about this world, about the story, about these people.
It's a little bit of this breadcrumb strategy, which I guess, especially in this format of a pilot movie, is sort of the balance act that they're trying to strike, because they need to give you a complete enough story that it all makes sense, but at the same time they need to make you excited for more because they want to make the rest of the show, right?
At
Yeah,
first,
but
I was.
Sorry,
At,
first you.
At first, I was very skeptical because I also found all of these pieces of information that you got very interesting, but I was skeptical if they would really work out something behind it that was worth sticking with it, because because
The
it
big
was so,
picture.
if the big picture was interesting enough and if it would not be disappointing. I was skeptical in the beginning, actually, so that's interesting that we're already discussing this right now.
I mean, this is sort of the curse of anybody in my position introducing new people to Babylon 5, that we always end up reassuring people that no, it's all going to matter, and the creator has a big plan. We always sing the praises of J. Michael Straczynski, JMS for short, who is like the mastermind behind it all, and then we slowly watch as the show unfurls and everybody starts nodding and says, oh yes, he actually was that amazing and was doing that. But no, it's nice to see that at least within the context of this first episode, this strategy already seems to be holding up and holds attention without me needing to reassure everybody that it's definitely worth it, guys. It's going to be fine. The
And
one
I think
detail that I
the-
really like about the storytelling, to latch onto this in the very beginning, is that this first introductory text that we get in the opening of the show is given to us by Londo Mollari, which I kind of found funny because throughout the entire Gathering movie, he has this storyline that he keeps trying to tell people about the greatness of the Centauri Republic and this one time they conquered the Beta system. So he seems to be naturally a storyteller who has just a way with words, and so he seems kind of the natural choice as the one who would talk about Babylon 5 also in this very elevated way as this last best hope for peace and such.
Yeah, at the same time, the character is not that big in the movie.
Yeah.
He has his role, but he's not that prominent, but still sticking to, hey, he would fit into the storyteller role, and use him for the introduction is really nice to see, because it means people have thought about it and not just, how can we do it? Oh, let's roll a dice, see what comes out of it.
Especially because he's almost like an observer on the sidelines. Like, he talks about the fact that once we were this great republic and controlled everything here, and now it's the humans that are the new sharks of the galaxy. So he's almost like, yeah, my own people don't really do this much anymore, so I'm just gonna sit here and now tell the story of somebody else who's kind of following in our footsteps.
Yeah, that's one point where I think, which is also nice, you have this different alien species, different cultures, and they are presented in this way, not especially or necessarily through optical differences, but the way they act, how they talk, what they consider important and what is not that important. Like the question Dylan asked, I think was it, who asked why did you construct a fifth Babylon after the other four failed, which is quite nice. She would just give me this feeling, so the humankind had to come out into the space to build this because no one else got the idea to sit together at a table and do diplomatics, and they were just at each other's throat. Yeah, gave me a bit of a bad feeling, I have to admit.
Should I jump on this one, or?
I was thinking, which moment are we talking about exactly? Which conversation is it?
They have a conversation in is it the one in the Zen garden where they are sitting together,
Yes.
where they are just talking about...
But who? Dylan and who?
Sinclair.
Sinclair. Mm.
So they're both sitting and pondering the meaning of the station.
Yeah, I think what we are getting here in the first episode, or in this first film, is just the idea of that all of these cultures exist and already have a long and dramatic history with each other, or some of them with each other, and those are difficult because we get this, that the humans and the Minbari had this dramatic war that still leaves both cultures very puzzled, actually, and that is not really resolved, like mentally, politically, just for them internally, actually. And then we get that the Narn have been occupied by the Centauri, and so you just get this idea of they all have a reason to be there because they have very difficult relationships with each other, and it is only teased there how they are in detail and how they are going to work out later.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think it's the presentation on this is done wonderful. But what would give me this bad taste is just, why does it have to be the humans? It feels like this some kind of glorification, and that is something that rubs me the wrong way. I mean, we have it in history that there where things failed and failed again, and humankind tried and tried and finally made it. I just to show off at this moment, I had to think of the story from Stefan Zweig, from Decisive Moments in History. It's a miniature collection about history elements. I think at about 12 and there's the story which is called The First Word to Cross the Ocean, where a telegraph cable should be should travel from Europe to America, and it took 4 times until they succeeded, which was always bound to a lot of money, a lot of work or labor more, and yeah, I get this. We have this in history, but at this context, I don't know. It's just. I mean, the Minbari are considered the oldest species,
Yeah.
and then the humans, the youngest, come. Hey, we have an idea. I mean, okay, you could translate this to generation parts, like the old generation doesn't come up with new ideas. I know this is quite can be quite offensive, but it tends to be this way. And the young come, hey, we have a new perspective, we have a new idea. Why don't we try this? But yeah, it just, I don't know, it still feels wrong for me to see
No,
this.
now I understand. And yes, actually, without saying too much about it, but we had in another episode that comes later a moment where I had a similar complaint.
Yes.
I cannot say more to it, but we will get there. But maybe if we find out while we are watching more episodes more about the relationship or the constellation that humans have in general in all of these species and with the Minbari, maybe the position the humans are in will make more sense if we watch on. But I think that will just develop over time. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe the point will stay like it is. We will see.
I mean, I definitely agree that there is this sort of anthropocentric idea that we are the special ones and this is why we are the protagonists of the show. To its credit, though, we do get in this movie one scene where there's just 2 aliens talking about each other and not about humans. We have this conversation between Jakar and Dylan, where they are trying, like, where they're interacting, and he even proposes, like, an alliance between the Narn and the Minbari. And maybe this is even already kind of a hint at why this usually doesn't work out, because immediately Dylan shuts it down with this idea of, oh no, you Narn, you have just this history with the Centauri, you are just bent on revenge, and this is why you would always abuse any alliance that we have with you. So there is also this kind of idea, all of these species have a complicated history with each other, which can be very prohibitive. They don't really trust each other because they've all at some point betrayed each other's interests. And maybe this is what just kind of gives humans this leeway. Nobody has any sort of beef with the humans. They are just newcomers. So maybe this is why they can create something like Babylon 5 as a neutral place and people kind of buy into it, because when anybody else would be doing it, they would be much more mistrusting and being like, well, here's 5 examples from recent history where you would use this to your own advantage, so why should we trust you now? Which doesn't do away with the fact that it's still this humans are special phenomenon, but maybe this is what plays into it. I think I agree that as we get more context on this, maybe it will become more clear. If we're already talking about conversations that Jakar had, any strong opinions on the beautiful conversation that he had with Lita?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Heavy science, just the correct answer for this. It's, yeah, patriarchal, sexistic, there's no other way to describe this. And I mean, he's going in for like, hey, I have a proposal for you, and at the end it's like, yeah, but I know you will agree, so which way do you like it? So in the end, actually she doesn't have a choice, or she's not really told she has a choice. You have to do what I say. That's the
Which
point of this.
in this instant is really nasty, but funnily enough, also not the only time in this episode that this happens to her. Because I think, Meike, you even mentioned this when we were watching the episode for the first time. Later on, when it comes to the question, well, who's gonna have the fun task of scanning the Vorlon, it's once again people coming to her and being like, so we have this fun idea that we decided to definitely pursue without your consent on anything.
I remember what you mean, where she's told, yeah, we have this problem, you could solve it, but we can't push you to solve it. But if you don't solve it, we all die, which
Yeah,
is
and
just
it's your fault,
and it's
particularly.
your fault, of course. So it's just emotional pressure put onto her, and she doesn't really have a choice, which would be interesting to see if telepath in the future are treated always or at a larger scale this way, that they don't really have a choice in their life.
Most definitely. I mean, the one other scene that she has in the show is during the trade negotiations, where the only thing we really learn is that people really don't like telepaths, because even if there's not a prejudice because of privacy issues and reading minds, it's just they make negotiations much harder, and you actually have to be fair about them. So already a big chunk of society is not going to like them. So there's definitely going to be an interesting question how they are treated.
And the point, I think it is before she scans the Volon, it is that she talks about how hard it is to get to a certain level, that I think a lot of telepaths lose their mind, or something along the lines, which just sparks the question, why are you doing this? You're treated badly, you're obviously hated even to a certain level. So why are you pushing this far? Why are you troubling yourself? Why are you putting yourself in such danger to achieve this?
Yeah, or what is the alternative? I think that is not really told anywhere
No.
in this pilot. No, yeah. That definitely leaves some question, but it also kind of shows that the pilot, just with a lot of cozy feeling, just gives you this glimpse of this is how the world works, and that we have this telepath and that they can do certain things. It's just something we are being introduced to, and really the problems and the consequences of that are not being told in this part so far.
Yeah, it's not presented as this big moral conundrum that needs to be solved right now. It's more, this is a fact of life that people in this show kind of generally accept.
But still, it states that the questions that you need to answer to make this episode or movie a whole thing are answered and not left out. It's just that you have enough breadcrumbs where you say, oh, I want to see more of this, but you still have the feeling after watching this movie, okay, it has a good ending. I'm not left hanging somewhere.
Yeah, I
Which
think I
not
agree. And maybe we can sort of swerve back, because we've been talking a lot about things that are happening on the sidelines a little bit. Maybe we make a quick swerve into the resolution of the main plot, because we gave the synopsis of, okay, this murder mystery is opened up, and we get in the end this resolution of it was a Minbari of a extremist group of the warrior caste that didn't deal with the end of the Minbari War that at this point we had already heard about, and he had this like special technology. Was this? I guess this is also a question for you, Meike, as somebody who comes into this entirely fresh. Is this a compelling mystery without much more context?
I wouldn't say that it's compelling. Since it's such a slow-paced storytelling, you got a good feeling about the station. You don't necessarily understand at the moment. It happens that, oh my God, it has such a of such essential yeah
Importance?
importance. There was such essential importance, but just the context of knowing, okay, this is an ambassador, it's an important person, you can translate it to the real world because it's not some kind of fictional position they created.
Yeah.
So I don't think it really matters. It's nice to have more information, but at the way it's presented, I wouldn't say it's necessary to put more in there. Maybe it would even complicate things, because then you would think more, why is this happening in this precise moment? It's a bit softer this way, and fits in more into the movie than if you made it more complex, because I don't think the time would be sufficient for something bigger.
No?
I can't really answer your question because I've only ever watched it as the last thing.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
But yeah, I mean, I also think, I honestly didn't ever think that Ambassador Kosh was going to die. I think it was kind of clear that he wouldn't in that episode, for me at least.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I have to say, yeah, at this point, I knew also that he wouldn't die, because we didn't clearly made it the Chronicle way and watched the first episode
It's true.
also before the movie. So maybe that's
I'm gonna say that's not too
but I
tragic.
wanted to say something more.
Okay, go on.
Because, I mean, I just thought while watching that even if this was the first thing I'd ever watched, I'd still not believe that he was truly going to die, because the episode just didn't feel so dramatic. But again, even with the main plot, we are getting interesting background information about the relations that all of these species have to each other and with each other, because we have this Minbari that does not accept the end of the war and has a problem with how the war ended, and is therefore committing this assault to the ambassador and trying to manipulate Babylon 5 as a place. But we also get the information that there are people on Earth who believe that the war should have been fought to the end, that there are people on Earth who say that the military of the humans would have been strong enough to fight against the Minbari, and not if they had not, and to win if they had not withdrawn. Although people in the military, like Sinclair, are very aware of, no, we would have never won, we would have lost and all died. So we see that on both sides, this sudden end of the war is not understood and accepted, and causes a lot of trouble. So even the main plot just adds up to basically telling more about this situation the humans and Minbari are in, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that adds up, especially with Sinclair in the conversation at the Zen Garden, giving this little quirk of, well, if people knew that he and Dylan were talking, even just that would be enough for some people to hang them both, because it's just such a taboo. And I guess this might circle back to the question of why haven't people done something like Babylon 5 before? Because this episode gives us a lot of points of friction that are created because this place of meeting exists. If everybody just stayed in their corner and, they fought this war 10 years ago and then they just, stick to their side on the border, then something like this assassination attempt wouldn't happen, or the threat of going to war with the Warlords would have never happened if you didn't try to get an ambassador of them anywhere near you. So it's kind of, you can see the sort of logic behind saying, well, if it's difficult, it creates problems, so why even try, right? Which I guess is one of these things that you always need to overcome when you're talking about any kind of diplomatic contact in the real world.
Which is also seen when presenting the different species, because there are in every species presented the point where they say there's no peace, it's not going to work in one way or another. If it's Jacquard, who's the whole time trying to erase the possibility of this, or if it's Lando, who is just so melancholic and depressed from what his homeworld or his species has become, who actually doesn't really have a choice but to try to go for peace or fight for peace, but because of his depression, it's not going to work. So why even try?
Yeah, and he's also very disrespectful of all of these little routines and rituals and duties that he has on the station. I mean, he doesn't even appear when Ambassador Kosh arrives because it really shows his attitude towards everything. Like that he does not take it fully seriously and is fully lost in his melancholy. Yeah.
Yeah, like his perspective on Babylon 5 is kind of interesting because he describes the entire Centauri Republic as this like tourist attraction. So Babylon 5 is more like a merchandise shop where he can tell people about the Centauri, and if he's lucky, sell them a bunch of action figures of the cool Centauri emperors from yore. And so for him, it's this like very cynical take of, yeah, this is a great place where you can gamble and you can take money, but he treats it more like Las Vegas than, New York with the actual UN.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also always with this dark part showing
Absolutely.
that he's desperately through telling his stories, he's desperately trying to uphold a certain version of his species and their history,
Yes.
which is no longer there. So this is actually everything. I mean, it's part of him being an ambassador, but of course also everything, or at least it seems everything which is holding him up, because there is nothing else he could identify with.
And it's interesting that this is so much focused on not his personal past, but the Centauri Republic as a whole, because we learn in this very episode that he is very well aware that this past wasn't as glorious. He gets blackmailed by Jakar into voting in this episode by the threat of revealing that his grandfather was a war criminal and was like involved in atrocities during the occupation. So clearly he must be aware on some level that the golden days weren't as golden, but this is what he holds on to because it seems there is not much else.
Yeah, which I may say something offending again, but I have this that people a certain age start saying things like, "Oh, it was better when I was a child. When I was, it was better in the past than it is now," and that is how this feels to me.
Yeah, it's once again this generational conflict, like you mentioned, where this then leads you into falling into these patterns. Like, why would you try anything new when your experience has been, well, the old stuff is what was good?
Yeah, he's not really open for new things because that was good, and he has the mindset there will never be anything as good as this, which perfectly fits into his depressive state.
Which, I mean, it also seems to be what his old government is after, right? Like, he says he's been sent to Babylon 5 mostly to grovel at the Earth Alliance because it's the rising power, and so this is their way of gaining power again, ally themselves with the new kid on the block.
While we're talking about the different species, can we please talk about Jakar's handkerchief?
Yes, we have to. Do you remember at the very end? He has this, like, cloth handkerchief that is embroidered and, like, handmade, and he holds it before him as he's very shocked at things that are happening, and he's, like, very flamboyant about it. It's wonderful.
I don't remember. Oh my god.
We will find a picture of it and put it up on screen right here.
When I saw this, I just loved this handkerchief. I don't know what. I have to admit, for some reason, I had a Bilbo Beutlin in front of my eyes at that moment, because I don't know. It's like he's going out on a quest to a place where he wasn't before. He never was. And wait! I have to get my handkerchief. I can't travel without my handkerchief. That
He goes
is not
on an adventure,
possible.
but he needs to be civilized about it.
Yes. Or I don't know, or maybe it was his mom. Boy, you can't go there to this uncivilized people. Here, take your handkerchief, my dear.
I do love the image of Jakar getting shipped off his homeworld, and he's like ready to take the revenge to the Centauri and incite an entire war. And there's this very caring elderly Nan woman behind him that's just trying to make sure that her son is gonna be fine along the way.
Boy,
It's
do
very
you have
sweet.
enough underwear? You never know when you need new underwear. I hope you packed enough.
I can kind of see it. Yeah, he has like so many little flourishes, even earlier on in the episode when he's talking to someone, and his gesture of greeting has like this little swirl in it, and he jumps off and dances with every step a little bit. He is a very he's a very like theatrical, expressive character, and it's very enjoyable.
Yes, but all of these things are interesting in this film. We don't see much else yet about Nan culture, right?
No, we don't even
Okay.
see his quarters yet, so it's all very based on his person. So if the handkerchief is just a personal affection, we will regardlessly now assume that every Nan has one of these, and they are all quite as fashionable.
I like this idea. I honestly like this idea.
I mean, honestly, I think the species that we learn the most of culture-wise is probably the Minbari, because Dylan has this in-depth conversation, and it all kind of aims towards this very spiritual element, which she is also a part of. But I also like that immediately Sinclair started picking up on some of these things, and then later on describes himself as, well, I am kind of part of the warrior caste of the humans. So it's not just alien species looking at humanity and just comparing themselves to that, but it's also the human characters looking at these alien species and adopting some of that themselves.
Yeah, just cultural exchange.
Yeah,
Like
it's the work.
everywhere it should be.
The station is working as intended. It's great. Okay.
I think Delenn is the only species who her quarters are shown. The others, we said Jakars, we don't see. Landos.
He's
We don't
only in the
see
casino.
either.
He
He lives
probably
there.
lives there. He's
Yeah,
broken
there
this
you go.
episode, so he might be homeless. It's very possible. And
Yeah,
I mean,
sleeps on
obviously,
the-
we do see human quarters because Sinclair gets his frictionless sheets, which we haven't talked yet about. But no, he has like an entire relationship in this movie
Yeah.
that comes up.
I have to say I was very happy to see this, because if I think about other series, then it's always the main character or captain, commander, whatever the position is. It's always this. He's not bound to anyone. He's not married. He has no significant other, or that person is dead.
Yeah.
That are the options, none or dead.
And
So I really like this when his wife character appeared, and he obviously had a longer relationship with her.
And it's very interesting that he is a very multifaceted character in this way, that he seems to have led multiple lives at this point. We know he was a pilot on the Battle of the Line, so he has this heroic past. Then he has this girlfriend, wife, partner of some sort, who she didn't even know about that part of his life. She just discovers this medal here, so he obviously had a life completely departed of that. Then we also learn that he personally had a command on Mars, where he picked up Takashima and gave her a second chance. She talks about this with the Doctor. So you get this idea that, yeah, this isn't a very young guy. This is a guy that has been around for decades, and he has led many different lives in this time, and they all sort of contribute and work together, which is, yeah, it's not as one note as I guess we're used to.
Yeah, especially he has seen things, a lot different kind of aspects and different areas everywhere, which actually makes him quite a good choice for his position.
Yeah.
If I don't know if I have to think like Enterprise or something. you don't have this feeling that they were doing anything like this.
I guess the most we learn is with Picard. At some point, we learn he had a Starship Command before, and before
Yeah,
that, he
but
was at the Academy. So it's a very straightforward story by comparison. Yeah.
exactly. That was what I wanted to say. It's straight. It's a straight way they made through their lives, and Sinclair is a bit like he's doing zigzags or doing a retour or whatever you would describe this path, but it's not a straight way, which I also really like, because life is not this way. You don't have this straight life, a straight way you walk. So makes him also very sympathetic.
And I think the rest of the station too, we get this with Garibaldi, that he wasn't very successful in his career until he got picked up by Sinclair. We get this with Takashima, so it's almost this idea that everybody on the station has taken these like little detours to end up in this very unusual space, which makes sense because this isn't an assignment that any career in Earth Force would naturally lead to, because it's such a unique place. There is one more thing that I wanted to mention connected also to his girlfriend. I don't know if this scene exists in the original version that I watched with you, Layla, so correct me if I'm wrong, but in the very beginning, Mike, you will remember this, there's the scene where a smuggler comes aboard and he wants to bring drugs on the station, and Sinclair takes it upon himself to punch the guy in the face and declare that no guns or drugs on my station, which very much feels like the 90s thing to do of, we are going to have to put a PSA in this. And tell people that drugs aren't cool. Is this in the original version as well? Because I had a feeling this is an addition that came later on. And maybe we can talk very quickly about the differences between the original version and the special edition, because in some cases I feel like it helps, in other cases I feel like it doesn't really. I don't really necessarily enjoy the PSA part of that scene, but it does highlight a character trait for Sinclair, that he is kind of gung-ho and he is kind of very eager to jump into the fray, which is kind of interesting because the partner that he has here is this like civilian spaceship captain who is going out and having adventures in the galaxy while he stays kind of at home at this station. So it feels like his own desire to kind of take action and go into the fray seems to translate also into the people that he enjoys being with, which is kind of a nice, sweet detail, I thought.
If the scene is in the version that I've watched and I just don't remember it, it's kind of embarrassing. I just thought, but no, I don't think it was in it. Yeah, but that is an interesting characterization, actually. Because he definitely, also when you think about him picking up Garibaldi, who also here has the problem that he is in general mistrusted because he has done some mistakes, and he has this gut feeling about people and about situations, and he's very often very right and really spots things that no one would notice. But so he's also very fast and very impulsive and often does things wrong to do the right thing. And so picking him up also kind of was like, could show his desire to jump right into stuff. Yeah.
Also shows his taste in potential partners.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We should ship it.
Yes, and I think it's interesting because this emotional impulsive part we have shown here is on one side a nice addition to his or for his diplomatic job, which is logical and shouldn't be too emotional, because he can now, maybe it's better for him or easier for him to see, can I trust this person? On the other hand, I think it can lead him to a very bad section, because because he is so tempered, so hot-tempered. So the chances are high that he messes things up.
Yeah, and he's a risk taker with that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting thing to see which sort of balance he has to keep in his job, and that it's not just the other part in this diplomatic scenery. He has to as an enemy or puncher hand, but also himself.
Okay, and I mean, this is definitely something that we'll have to look for in future episodes. And I think, looking at the time, it's high time that we are moving into our third and final discussion part, which is going to be the tapestry, this fancy name that we've termed, where the idea is...
What's your idea of it? Because I also have one.
Okay, we will see which one sticks depending on who keeps talking. So Babylon 5 is often praised for being a very pioneering show in terms of storytelling. It is very serialized. It's not like other 90s shows where there's a reset button at the end of every episode. Characters develop, the story develops, and there's an overall grand plan for it all. Which is true, it is a very unique show in this way, but it's also very different from the modern shows from the streaming era that we are more used to, that are very continuously in storytelling. Think of something like Game of Thrones or Stranger Things, where it's more like one big continuous movie. And I think sometimes there can be this misconception that you watch Babylon 5 and you're kind of expecting everything to click together automatically very quickly, which it doesn't. For a good half of this entire show, it's going to be a mix of this 90s formula and the more modern thing that we know. And I think to help with that and to really get the most out of this style of storytelling, every time we are going to take these episodes and try to figure how do they fit into the bigger picture. Is the story doing that for us, or is there a more thematic connection or something else that we are looking out for? So any ideas on what we can use as starting points here, because everything else is going to build on top of that?
Yeah, my question would be to you, Meike. What would you expect from this first episode to matter later? Like, what do you think are the points that are be picked up later that are making up the big story in the end?
One point would certainly be the past, like what exactly happened in the war between the Minbari and the humans. And I mean, especially this ending part where or where the assassin is dying and say you have a hole in your head, which perfectly fits in his memory or Sinclair's memory loss. Certainly something I would expect. Otherwise, I would be a bit sad, because this is made so big that you ask a whole time, okay, what exactly happened? So this is certainly one part. The continuity problem between the species, of course. G'Kar, I mean, okay, I watched the first episode already, but I'm certain that G'Kar is or will keep pulling his strings and doing even more. It would be interesting if there would be new species that get in there. Maybe an additional ambassador. And well, what I'm excited about or interested in would be character development. First is their character development, because sadly this is something that a lot of serious neglect to a certain point. And yeah, if they develop, in what way? What is the let's say end product from that what we have at the start here? I think that was about it.
Yeah, those were good points. I don't think we're going to say more to
We're
them,
not going to
right?
say anything on that. The one follow-up question I would have, is there any character that you would be especially looking for an interesting development? I certainly know, especially after talking with you about it now, watching Sinclair seems like it will definitely be an interesting thing, because he already has this kind of checkered past, and now there's sort of the question, which of these past lives is going to be the most relevant to him for the rest of the show? Is he going to really settle down with this woman? Is he going to be very gung-ho about things and try to lead the station like a fighter pilot that he was at the Battle of the Line? Or is he going to really get more into the diplomatic things. I think this could be interesting if after having this very zigzagging past, is there a path forward that now becomes more clear to him?
Certainly, my personal interest would be also in Lando, because I would love to know if he gets out of his depression. Because I think at right now it's a big thing everywhere. So I would be interested if there is a development and how do they do it. I mean, 1994 is quite a long time ago.
Say that again. All the original fans are going to love you for it.
And that would be interesting to see if he gets out of the depression.
And what he's doing, if he is going to make Centauri great again.
Is he gonna get elected again? It's a very big question. Yeah. Yes, of course.
Yeah. What I also be interested is what is with the telepaths to see. I mean, there's a change of the telepath, if I remember correctly.
Yes. There are a few changes, actually. Yeah.
There are a few changes for different reasons. With Lita, it is legitimately assumed that for the most part she wasn't appealing enough to look at, to be followed up on in the rest of the show. So
I liked her.
She's so hot.
Yeah, well, your youthful sensibilities of the early 21st century don't apply to the 90s. Back then she was red-haired, so already out of the picture. No chance.
This is horrible. Let's build a time machine. Let's go back there, Layla. That's not acceptable.
Let's change everything.
And Takahashi is Takashima. Sorry, not Takahashi. Takashima is no longer there, right?
No.
She wasn't. Which I think is quite sad. I liked her. I liked her vibe.
In general, it's often said that her performance is very wooden, but I mean, maybe I'm just horrible judging people's behavior, but it didn't stand out horribly to me. And I guess this also opens the question. I mean, there is this entire group of people around Takashima and the Doctor and Lita who are all kind of in this plot to help the Vorlon and scan the Vorlon, and all of them disappear after this episode. So, we will see if that ever gets resolved.
We know what happened. The Vorlons, they are at fault here.
Yes, exactly. They just abducted them all into a big spaceship like cows and then flew away.
I mean, how could dare they? They watched Kosh without his suit.
Yeah, they saw him naked. They are just really, really prudish, these Vorlons.
No FSK 18 there.
I don't know if this rating exists outside of Germany, so we'll have to...
So that's just like the highest, like the real adult stuff for anyone listening.
The good stuff.
Okay, but I think unless you have any big picture connections that you're trying to draw?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so we will see that in other times. Okay, so this means for me that I did not prepare an outro for this, by the way. So we will improvise one.
More important part would be to ask what would our listeners want to be called, because this is a podcast, and every good podcast or like every music group out there, the fans, they have a name. They call themselves, like, I don't know, the army or whatever. So the question would be, how do they want to be called?
Yes. How do we get to a first community name? Okay, so this is a question we'll definitely keep in, and otherwise, I think the most important thing to keep always in is a sort of outlook of what we're going to do next, because the episode order can get kind of wonky in certain places. So we're going to take next time a look at Midnight on the Firing Line, which You've already watched, Meike. We might watch it again if you're up to it. We will see, and we will have to watch it again as well, so that it's fresh on our minds.
Yes, I was just nodding because I thought you were talking to me.
Good. So we will do that, and then we will see how the next introductions and how the next structuring goes.
All right.